So joining us next, we're going to say hello and welcome to Richard Rosenow, VP for People Analytics Strategy at One Model. Richard, could you make your way to the stage?
Hi.
You have a clicker for you?
Thank you so much.
Sir.
Thank you. Let's dive right in there. We're going to talk about unlocking the power of people data platforms and your people data platform, what that means and what it means to actually get access and connect with that data within the workforce. But first, just a quick introduction. I'm Richard. It's good to meet those of you who haven't met yet. A little bit of my background. I got my actual start in nonprofit. I heard a couple other nonprofits out here. Shout out to that group. Love that, love seeing that. And got my start in HR working for workforce planning with GE Capital, had some HR roles with Citibank, but I quickly found my way to people analytics. And I had a lot of fun kind of moving across the people analytics space. I saw a number of different teams, very different setups, very different ways to go about this space. So Facebook, I actually got to join that team. It was still Facebook at the time. There were about 15 people on people analytics when I joined. That team grew to about 150 at its peak, just in people analytics. It was a very exciting time, very interesting time. But you can do that when you have a 50% profit margin. It is very hard to accomplish that other places. And so I started looking around. I said, hey, how do other teams do this? And I actually made the move to Uber to see that happen. Uber was actually building at scale with technologies. They said, we can't scale with 150 people. We can't build a team of this scale. We have to find a way to actually push things out and productize what it means to build out a people data platform and people analytics. Took my talent then over to Nike. They were actually building a team of 100 from scratch. And I had to see that happen. Just the kind of academic side of me, the interest in me, I was like, this team, to be able to go from kind of, hey, let's start to let's go the entire way, to see that happen in a year, turns out you can't. There's some barriers you run into when you try to go to 100 in a year, and a lot of lessons learned. We don't have any Nike people here, right? Okay, good. A lot of lessons learned. So come find me afterwards. And I think that's the benefit here too of people analytics evolving over the past couple of years is we actually have some failures too in this space. And there's things we can pick up and learn along the way about what it actually means. But I actually built out some data platforms, some data foundations, did a lot of the in-house work with data engineering when I was over there at Nike. Jumped over to Argo AI to actually build out HR tech, people analytics, and PMO. Got to see across those different domains, worked with Workday a lot there, worked with other systems, and I was actually one model buyer when I was over there. So got to see people analytics from the ground up to see what that looks like to scale. And through that, I actually had the opportunity to come over to One Model. So I've been at One Model now for about 2 years, and I'm our VP of People Analytics Strategy. That's a lot of buzzwords in one title. My MBA program would be very proud of that, but the truth is, it's an interesting job. I get to work horizontally across the company. I get to see a lot of things, but the most important piece is I get to talk to a lot of people analytics teams. At the end of the year, I took a look at my calendar, and maybe this is my inner nerd, but I coded my calendar. Who did I talk to? What did I get up to? Spoke with nearly 400 people analytics teams a year. And so I get to hear, conferences are great. You hear a lot about the wins. You hear a lot about the best things going on in people analytics, whatever it might be. When you talk to people one-on-one, you hear what's actually happening. You get to hear the truth of what's actually going on. You get to hear the kind of, again, those failures, those pieces that are like, hey, this is hard. We're in this together. We're working through this together. And so I've been able to pick up a lot of those. And I do a lot of our community research around the people analytics space. So I'm excited to talk to you all today. But let's start with this question. This is a good one. And I start with this every time I talk just about because people analytics is a new function. I say new, it's probably relatively new at this point. Really the kind of modern people analytics function maybe emerged 15 years ago, really at top. But the truth is it's still forming, it's still coming together. There's a lot of different names, there's a lot of different words out there. It is confusing. If I can give you one thing to take away right now, it's like if you're struggling to figure this out within your organization, if you're struggling to figure out data, like why is this hard? It is hard. And everyone's having a hard time with it. That's from Facebook all the way through. So you're not alone out there, and definitely feel that. So when I talk about people analytics, I have 3 definitions. And this first one really ties into what I was just saying there, which is the community. People analytics is a community of practitioners that are coming together to drive and create a better world of work through data. This is really important. And again, if you take one piece away here today, there is a thriving people analytics community that is so nerdy about this topic. We all love to talk about it. Everybody out there in people analytics, you can't get them to stop. But go find those people. Find the people in your organization. If you're maybe nervous about or thinking about getting into data or thinking about how do I better use this in my workplace, find those people analytics people in your city and your communities. They are out there. They want to talk. They want to engage. The other one I think about as a definition is the act of people analytics. And I really separate this from the other ones, where the act of people analytics, this is my boiled down definition. There's a lot of definitions out there. There's actually an academic paper studying about 50 different definitions to try to figure out what this definition is, but here's my boiled down one. The use of data to support workforce decisions. And this is true kind of across a lot of functions of the business today. We are all trying to make better decisions with data. And this the other kind of key part of this is not just an HR thing. People analytics, the act of people analytics is everybody in the company has to do this. Whether you're a manager, a leader, the CEO, you are making decisions about your workforce. You should be doing those with data. And so when we think about it this way, this is a very broad skill set we have to pick up as organizations today. But in truth, too, there is also a function. There is a group of people that is starting to form within HR teams, and these functions of people analytics, they support the act across the business. They're made up of people in the community. And this function is really the one that puts the guardrails, that supports people, that helps build out. And I'm sure that a number of you actually have people analytics functions. Can I see a raise of hands? Who has a people analytics function in business? That's a delightful amount of hands. I think even 10 years ago, it was just a few hands. And like to see this room, to see that many teams, I love that. So when we think about the function, this has really been the area of my research. And this is really what I've been fascinated with my past decade in the people analytics space, is studying and understanding what is the people analytics function, how does it come together, and how do we better support this? And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So with that too, what are people analytics leaders hired to do? And this may be an abstract question. A lot of you have people analytics teams, but think about this too. What did you hire your people analytics leader to get done? A lot of times, those people analytics leaders, they're hired to bring analytics and people together, surprise. The technology, the data, the science, and blend that with the human, the intuition, the ethics. And at the end of the day, they're there to do education, consulting, and of course this descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive. This is that job description. We put this together for people analytics leaders and we say, come into our organization and blend these worlds for us. The reality though, what does a people analytics leader need to do to survive? At the end of the day, they come in and they realize, oh no, IT and HR have not spoken in a number of years. Oh no, I'm in spreadsheets. I have to do data acquisition, data munging. If you don't know the word munging, that's a fun data science word. That means clean all the mud off your data. Just munge the data, get it all architected in the right ways. They've got to become data engineers. And they have to navigate the politics to be able to get access to secure, to keep this data safe, to bring this data together. At the end of the day, this is invisible work. This is work that people analytics leader was not hired to do. Within their first few weeks, they have to leave their job description. They have to go do work that maybe HR doesn't quite understand, maybe IT doesn't quite care about, and they have to live in this space to carve out this world to be able to do their job. And this is consistent. This is, again, those conversations I've had with people analytics leaders, this is a pain that every one of them is feeling. So if you have your people analytics leader, send them a note, say, I feel your pain, I know you today, and let them know, because this is interesting that they are not doing their jobs by doing this work, but they have to do this work to do their job downstream. So how do we get here? What happened that this is the scenario we're in? And it's across the board. We are all in this scenario, all of our leaders that are trying to make sense of data. So when we think about it, when we think about kind of like core HR, like why are we here as HR? We really started focusing in on that HR strategy. And I love what the panelists up here were talking about there too. Really, we are here to differentiate the business through decisions about the workforce. And that's the artisan HR, where we started, our kind of core business unit. That's what we get up to. We were brought in to say, okay, let's create strategy, let's drive differentiation through that lens of the workforce. Then we said, hey, we can scale. We can scale through operations. If we start documenting processes, if we start getting people to do consistent things, work through checklists, we saw HR operations teams kind of come together and start to form to say, we can do these things at scale if we get a little bit more organized. Then we started to see HR technology, where HR technology says, hey, I saw what you were doing scaling through people. Let's scale that with the software now. Because software is truly the only thing that scales indefinitely and can scale and can really swallow the operations there. To be able to implement that technology that takes that operation and scales it efficiently. So we have our strategy, our operations, our technology, and then we said, let's bring our people analytics team in. And the truth is, we skipped a step. We skipped a step here of people data, this domain of extracting, cleaning, architecting, creating, making sense of our data. And we skipped it because the truth is, it actually doesn't matter until you have the analytics team. You've got to have that analytics. You've got to have the insight you're trying to get to. You've got to have the mission you're going after. Then we've got to backtrack. But that feels uncomfortable sometimes. We've got to go back that step. We've got to go back and understand what's happening in this data space. But that data domain is very different than the technology world. I'll say too, we call this the people data supply chain. We have a couple white papers coming out about this. I'm happy to talk about this anytime, but we've seen this consistently in organizations, both from a org structure, as well as just a flow that needs to be adhered to make sense of and create good people analytics. I'm not going to talk too much more about it today, but please connect with me. We'll find more time to talk about it. But this people data supply chain is critical to understand why are we feeling this pain in people analytics? Because we bring these people in, we bring these data scientists, these great minds, we say, get to work, and they're like, oh no, I have to go find the data. There's another thing happening. So workforce data is suddenly more important. We've been talking about this all week. Before 2023, people data fed people analytics. After 2023, it's also feeding generative AI. This is where we've had a lot of teams come to us and say, why is generative AI so hard in HR? Why am I having such a hard time? And the truth is we have not gotten our data out, organized, architected, and ready for use for people analytics, let alone for an AI tool that tries to do it autonomously without human oversight. So this idea of people data, it's suddenly coming into focus that this need we have to create a data asset, to think about data as HR leaders is suddenly much more important. And I like to call this the little red hen moment. Does anyone know the story of the little red hen? The little red hen found some corn and said to the other farmyard animals, who will help me plant the corn? They all said no and planted it. And who will help me harvest the corn? They all said no, harvested it. Then makes bread and said, who will help me eat the bread? And the other animals say, I want to. So I think about this, who will help me build the business case for analytics in my data? The HR leader asked. Not I, said the data engineering team, busy maintaining data pipelines for sales. Not I, said the information technology team, focused on streamlining the vendor landscape. And not I, said the enterprise analytics team, preoccupied with creating metrics for finance. I'm feeling some pain from the room. I'm feeling some empathy from the room on this. There is something happening here that we try. We are interested. We are invested. It is not us. We've been told that it's HR's behind. HR is not data-minded. The truth is we have been underinvested. And let's talk about this. This is a call for ownership. This is a call to get angry a little bit too. As we talk about the presentation today, when we think about what should we be doing as HR leaders, how do we come to the table when we ask about this? And I'm going to start to build the case for why we should be coming to the table and asking for HR data and owning this space. So we're going to talk about what is people data. I always like to come back to the definitions. We're going to talk about the nuances there. People data platforms. I'm going to introduce a framework that you can take back with you to think about this space and talk about why this matters. And we're going to talk about where to go for help. So what is people data? I think two definitions. I think first, it's a reflection of workforce activities. It's the things, the activities, the stuff the workforce does. That's the interactions, the productivity, those outputs that happen. But really important, it is also a reflection of humans at work. When we think about the sensitivity of this space, when we think about the data that we touch, that we work with as HR leaders, our stuff is different. This is not the same thing that finance deals with, that ops deals with. They deal with a lot of activities and workforce stuff on this left side. When it comes to actually what is meaning at work for someone, what is the potential of a human, what is their satisfaction with their manager, with their leaders, this data has a different level of sensitivity that requires HR to be at the table. And it needs HR to really layer on that extra piece that we only bring. Ooh, sorry. We'll watch out for that. Let's talk about the nuances. So, is data being captured the right way? So where are my HR people in the room? Could you please raise your hand and keep your hand raised? We're going to walk through an exercise here, I promise. We're going to move in a little bit. It's day 2, 8 a.m. here. So, okay, keep those hands raised. Lower your hand when this no longer becomes true. You know when people stop showing up in your head count. I hope all the hands are still raised. Let's go to the next one. People who quit are recorded as quitting. We saw one hand go down already. People who quit are recorded as quitting properly with the right time, day, and information. People who quit are recorded properly and tagged voluntary or involuntary. Tagged regrettable or non-regrettable. We got one hand left. They have an exit survey. Oh, we got one hand left. And that exit survey is evidence-based. We are out of hands. My friends, when we look at this, when we think about what do we need to build a predictive attrition study, if we want to try to predict and understand what's going to happen with an attrition, we need that last bullet. Where does IT tell us to stop? Where do we stop getting investment along the way here? And when do we get told, hey, that's enough, we need to go work on other priorities? This last one is critical, and this requires HR to be at the table to demand more from our data. We're going to do one more, and I promise HR leaders, let's get our hands up one more time. Can you run a report from your HR tech system on attrition? Hands down already. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, my friends. Can you run a custom report from that system? Can you download an extract from the back end of the system? Can you get that extract over time? Can you get that extract daily? How about with backdated changes? So if somebody quit on the wrong day, you got to send it back in. Ooh. How about from multiple systems? Can you blend those multiple systems together into a single data model? And do you have the business logic applied on top of what this means, what this meant? We have one hand up. It's my friend. Oh, we got two hands up. We got two hands up. I love that. More hands than the last exercise. But again, when we think about this, when we talk about what do we need as HR teams, what do we deserve as an HR team to be able to run our business, we need this last one. We need to have our business logic of who we are, where we came from, what happened, what does this mean when we did the M&A? And I won't raise hands for this one. You can rest your arms here. The other piece is data are not metrics. And I mean this specifically in terms of the raw data that comes out of your system. We start looking at terminations. These are all very different stories. When we look at terminations over a given period, 3 to 6, 12 months, year-over-year terminations, we start looking at, let's change the denominator. Let's look at average headcount. Let's look at started period, end of period. Let's look at daily average headcount. All four of these tell different stories. We start looking at the numerator. Does attrition mean full-time? Does it mean part-time people? Does it mean interns? Does it mean contractors? You start looking at our tags, voluntary, involuntary, regrettable, high, low performer. All of these tell a very different business story and solve different business challenges. And at the end of the day, what do our business stakeholders want? They actually want rolling 3-month regrettable high performer FTE terms who were hired as an intern that went to a competitor. We've all gotten asked for that. So despite having all these other pieces, they want something very specific. We have to be able to take our data and turn that into a metric. That's where HR needs to be at the table for that. We can't give that up. So let's think about people data platforms. What is a people data platform? So when I think about a data platform, and this is happening across a lot of different domains and a lot of different areas today, is we start to separate, we see what is a people data foundation versus a people application layer. The data foundation is really where the extraction, the data modeling, and orchestration of workforce data happens. That's where your data comes from all your different places, comes into one spot, is made sense of within that layer. This is required for generative AI to work. The application layer is what happens with that data. Once that data goes to work, is that visualized? Is it used in different ways? Does it enable different processes? That application piece, turns out Gen AI is getting really good at that. And so the interesting thing we're seeing within the HR tech market is a lot more companies are starting to look at, hey, what is our data asset versus what is the application we've created? Historically, as HR, we've been sold the application layers. This nuance in this understanding is something we're going to have to pick up. We're going to have to start looking at and start poking at a little bit more as we have these different conversations. So if we break that out again, this is a framework we've developed to see extract, model, store, analyze, deliver. Your people data platform, whether you build one in-house or whether you find one or find a partner to work with, these systems have to accomplish these tasks. And I'll break it down one more step. This is getting kind of small font for the people in the back, but we've got a white paper I can send out on this too. Each one of these steps has many multiple lower steps within it. This is a framework that I developed when I was building RFPs, when I purchased people data platforms in the past, and it's something we've used to create questions to develop, to really get to the heart of what's happening within this system. Where do we go for help? So 5 signs your people data platform actually needs additional support. First, your IT department is prioritized and can't prioritize HR. I put can't in quotes there, because the truth is a lot of times we see a lot of IT teams that don't understand what we do. They don't know what we're up to. They don't quite understand the value that we bring, and that's an unfortunate piece. But the reality is a lot of times we run up against these politics with those internal teams. If your HR team is spending significant time during audits, this is a really important one. These people data platforms, not only are they good for kind of analytics or for generative AI applications, whatever it might be downstream, if you need to accomplish that audit to understand what happened when, who was sitting where at a given point in time, if that is hard, there's different investments you can make here. You've run into barriers munging your data. Remember, cleaning, getting that data ready. If you spend a ton of time each month getting that end-of-month report ready, if you're spending a lot of time cleaning and organizing, that's work. Again, it's invisible work. You're not going to get credit for that work. You get credit for the insight. You've got to find a way to accelerate and make that work more efficient. That gets you to the insight. If you see system outages, maintenance, if things are getting bogged down, there's a real pull between kind of maintaining things and innovating. If you've gotten into a world where you're just maintaining your current system, it stops you from going forward. In this last one, you don't have access to your data from your systems. I'm going to spend an extra minute on this. HR has been underinvested, it has been undersupported, and it has been systemically held back. I feel very strongly about that, having been in HR for the past, my career before I came over here, just looking around at these other teams, when you look at the finance teams, you look at the ops teams, the marketing teams, they have great platforms. They are business executives, and we are business executives. It is 2024. If you do not have access to your data, it's time to get angry. I don't know another piece about this here. It's time to push back. So what can we do to help? I promise I'll keep this one short here. What is One Model? That's what we get up to. This is a quick screenshot from our demo environment. We're a people analytics SaaS platform. We centralize, we model, we bring together your workforce data. We enable faster, better, transparent decision making, flexible storyboards, we've got machine learning. We accelerate the move to data. And at the end of the day, when we think about what this means, we give clients confidence. When you're in the boardroom, when you're talking to the CFO, when you're getting pushback, when you're on unstable ground with your data foundation, that can be a spot where you have to take a step back. You have to go work on something else. You can't be confident in that moment. We provide confidence to our clients. Our people data platform, we've got our data mesh. This is our data foundation. We then have our data stories and our AI tools. That's really our application layer. We provide these to clients we support in this space. And please come find us. Again, I'm Richard. That QR code will take you to the people data platform white paper. If you've got further questions, I can't get enough of this topic. Please come find me and let's chat. Thank you, everybody.
If we do have any questions, we have a moment to ask them, so take advantage. Please go ahead. We'll get the microphone over to you.
Any and all questions, I'm open to it. I'm very excited about Q&A.
Hi, I have a question about where your process, you say modeling versus storing. During that modeling phase, are you prioritizing data, and is it all being stored, or are you storing it in multiple places and saying, hey, this is the most useful for us to put into those dashboards, and this we're going to keep as a backup if we need it for KPIs down the road that we're unaware of now? What does that look like?
That's a really good question. So there's data that sits in your core HR tools. There's the data that you extract from those tools. There's the data that comes into the choice you're making about what you model, and then you store your analytical tables, your analytical data. And I think that flow there, you need copies of everything along the way. You've got to have your raw files a lot of times for audits, but that modeled data, that should be what you're using to create and drive business decisions. I think a lot of times as HR, we've been told, pick only what you need because we're not going to support you enough to give you everything. It's one of the things we provide as One Model. We create a single unified data model. We get all of your data out. So we create that model in one spot and in a combined spot so you have access to it. And to expand that kind of beyond One Model, mature people analytics teams are working that way. They're no longer being satisfied with, I'll just get the one report from Workday that I'm allowed to get. It's no, I need to go get access to all of it. I need to get it modeled and ready for use because these different features play in different surprising ways. There's things, you might be surprised. One of the examples I've seen was internal communications platforms. Those tools like First Up, our friends from First Up are here somewhere. They have a phenomenal platform. The data from tools like that, you can bring that in remarkably effective at attrition prediction to be able to bring in those internal comms platforms and tools. That's data that sometimes is very hard to get access to as an HR team. Or you might be told, no, just get whatever is your priority to close out just your reporting needs. So it is a different conversation there.
Too.
Oh, sorry.
So you're doing predictive modeling as well, and you can use those same type of scripts or frameworks and apply it to different data sets.
That's a great question too. So another piece, just in the spirit of 101 here, there is a big difference between data extracts for reporting and data extracts for data science. And I'll use the example with Workday. Workday has snapshot data. So each day you can pull one snapshot of what's in Workday that day. To do data science, you need data over time. HR, time is incredibly important for us. It's actually more important than other functions, which leads to some trouble where other functions might not understand what we do with our data. You can't have someone transfer after they quit. It really matters to have our data lined up correctly. People experience us through time. And so that ability to take raw file snapshots and turn them into that analytical feed, that's an incredibly important piece as you're exploring data platforms or trying to build or thinking about purchasing one. The ability to extract for machine learning and for predictive modeling is different than reporting. And that's a piece we should all take back and push your IT team about, because I've seen a lot of people get pressured into accepting reporting, and it's just not enough.
Thank you.
Great questions.
We've got one up here, Carl, too.
Someone's got a question over here. Here we go.
Hi, just a really, well, it might not be a quick question, but given we're in HR and oftentimes we're dealing with an instance of a platform that's been built or customized, like a Workday or whatever your ATS system is, and you can't really make changes. Not that you can't, but maybe the person that owns the system doesn't understand why you might want to start adding regrettable versus non-regrettable, and then how do you define that, and who audits once that information is input. What advice or recommendations would you have for people in the room to help make those business cases so that we have better data going into the system until we get to be able to fly a bit more with it?
It's a great question. So I think two things come to mind. I think it's bring the stakeholders' pain with you. So I think a lot about pain management in organizations. Maybe that's a bit of like a dire way to think about the world, but there is some stakeholder that has a pain that you're trying to solve. And there's a team upstream from you that is unwilling to make a change. A lot of times in HR, we take on our stakeholders' pain and we try to navigate that with an internal team on their behalf. And by doing so, sometimes we think we're helping our stakeholder. The truth is, if we don't bring that stakeholder with the pain with us along that journey and take them upstream to the HR tech team, or that tech team that might be unwilling to configure, that tech team may not be seeing our clients. They may not understand what's happening downstream or the pain that they're causing the business. So as often as you can bring that business challenge with you as you work your way back upstream, that's a huge way to drive things forward. So find the person with the most pain and bring them in to go yell at your HR tech team. That's the quick way to say it. The other one we're seeing is, I'll come back to that people data supply chain, that strategy, ops, tech, data, and analytics. We're seeing a lot of teams actually start to hire a COE leader over those 5 functions. It's a bit of a new umbrella function. You think about total rewards with comp, benefits, payroll, umbrella function, TA, recruiting, sourcing, you name it. We're seeing a new umbrella function pop up. We've been calling that workforce systems leader. We've identified about 40 of them across the Fortune 50 that are, it's a lot of teams that are going down this path. But it's why you see a lot of tech, ops, and strategy teams start to come together, is you can start to make those hard political decisions in a very quick and more navigable way than trying to pit the head of people analytics against the head of HR tech for internal fighting. It's just a waste of time. It's a lot of friction that's unnecessary. So sometimes it is that leader over top of those sub-functions that can actually navigate that a lot quicker. So two ways: bring the pain, maybe hire someone to navigate some politics.
I think I have one more question over here.
So how are you recommending that we build a relationship with IT? Because it sounds like IT has to be a partner and understand the need. What's been your experience in making sure that they get HR is important and that the functionality that we're wanting is not going to somehow interfere with them having data governance?
Yeah, I'll take a nice way and then a way that I'd like to see.
Thank you.
So the nice way, I think I've seen a lot of times those IT leaders, and this is true for CFOs too, the kind of finance leaders, they may not understand from their functions perspective, but they do understand as a people leader. So sometimes it is this communicate what we're doing. I've run into IT leaders that on the grounds of privacy and security, they're like, no, I will not give up my people data. But then I talk to them as like, hey, you're a leader of a 400-person organization. Do you actually have visibility into what's going on? Do you know what's happening with your organization? Where's your pain? And trying to bring them into the fold on understanding by getting access to this data, we can help solve some things for you specifically. And so speaking to them as the people leader. That's the nice way. I think the way that I'm interested in seeing more HR teams take is these other functions have a way of saying no very concretely. That's finance and IT in particular. They'll say, no, you don't get access. And then we have to deal with it. But then they come to us at the last minute and say, I need to recruit 50 more project managers. And we say, we'll do it for you. We'll help you. We're here for you. We're part of the team. HR is very much so a team player. We take on a lot. We take on a lot more from other functions than maybe we should or shouldn't. By doing so, we give up a little bit of power. We give up our ability to say no, to negotiate, to actually barter. And that's a tricky one. And it's one that I don't think I would necessarily want HR to move on. I want them to move. I want them to become more team players like us. But the truth is, I think there are some things in HR that we could claim a little bit more power on to say, hey, if you want what you want, if you want to continue working the way you're working, I'm going to need help. Let's come to the table. Let's start to work through this together. So those are kind of 2 approaches there I'd recommend.